Earnestly Podcast, coming to you Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. Recording in the late afternoon, about 4:30 p.m. How you guys doing? It is the Tuesday pod, officially. Labor Day, officially in the rear view mirror, which means we are off and running with content galore. Of course, this one is the first of 3 podcasts I'll be recording today. Obviously, I'm doing this one right now. We have our first episode of EJ the Degenerate, which is scheduled to come out tomorrow morning. We're recording tonight with me and Zach, the Degenerate. And then I'll be making my first appearance of the year on the Huddle Up Podcast this evening, which will be live on Huddle Up Podcast on Facebook, on YouTube. I'll be on there finally. Now, here's the dilemma. With that, Zach and I are supposed to record tonight, but I warned you guys about how my appearances on that show this year might be a little spotty because we're doing that show now on Tuesdays as opposed to Wednesdays because we're doing other things on Wednesdays and the schedule works out that way for me and all the parties involved. We're going to try to do that show early, but Zach already told me that he's working late tonight, so it may be a situation where I might be on Huddle Up tonight to start, and then when Zach gets in from wherever he is from work, he's going to say, okay, ready to record. I may have to drop off that show for a couple minutes to record that show. Now, that show's pretty easy. It's just this up picks and whatnot, so it takes about 30 minutes. So hopefully I'll get back in time to rejoin the show if necessary. Or maybe we finish that show early enough tonight where I can just drop off and do the show and do both. We'll see how that plays out. But that is the plan tonight. So, like I said, this we get past Labor Day. Now we're getting busy now with content, and we're gonna have shows galore on this feed. So if you love content on this, especially the content I put out, you look forward to feeding you guys all that good stuff there. And like I said, I'm getting back to normal now. Like I said, this is the last episode. I was just out of town recently on vacation to New York for a couple of days. I went nuts. I ate to my heart's content on that day and on that trip rather. And so I'm still recovering now. So I am getting back to health and fitness. I'm back to working out again on a regular basis. I'm back to eating healthy. In fact, the weight I gained on that trip, I gained a couple pounds that trip. I think I gained at least 7 or 8 pounds that trip. And I looked at it and I felt it. But, I went nuts. Food. I ate, not only did I eat really bad, I also ate very late. I don't ever eat late. See, even with my eating issues, I still fast every day. I still eat, within an 8-hour radius, whatever, 8-hour window, and I fast 16 hours. And sometimes longer. And a lot of times longer than 16 hours. And I don't eat late either. I always eat between, I keep my last meal of the day and my sleep time separated by at least 4 to 5 hours. On the strip, I'm eating pizza at 2 in the morning at Joe's Pizza in Broadway twice these nights. I had Chinese food on the Wednesday night, Joe's Pizza Thursday and Friday. So I am going against the grain on things I normally do. So that didn't sit well whatsoever. I had a good time, but at the same time, it didn't sit well. So I got back Saturday, like I said, and the first thing we did was I got back in order. I started fasting immediately. And I think I've already lost most of the weight that I gained on that trip, honestly. Because I started fasting from the time I landed back in Palm Beach, okay? I started fasting immediately. I didn't eat another meal until the very next afternoon. So I think I fasted about 18, 19 hours on going into Sunday. Then I fasted another 19 hours on Monday. And then today I think I fasted my regular 16 going into today. And then today, I also started working out again. I went to the gym, did some weights, so that was fun. I also walked over 2 miles today. So I am getting back to where I need to be. The thing for me, as always, is always staying consistent. I get on these rolls where sometimes I do very well for a while, and then I stop. This summer was rough for me because kids being home, and, I don't have enough time to myself to go outside even for an hour to work out because I got to be in the house with them. So it gets very challenging in that way. So while I did work out and, whatnot this summer most I could, it was not to the level I was doing it prior to the summer starting. But now the kids are back to school. The kids are back to school now. So now I need to stay consistent. Also, the good thing about vacations being done, for me anyway, is that now I don't know about saving money anymore for this trip. Now I don't know about stressing them for this trip, about the kids and where they're going to go, money saved, all the planning. And look, I had a phenomenal time in New York. Phenomenal time. But I also hate spending money. I cannot stand it. And on this trip, we try to, this is the thing with me and my wife. You would think my wife would be, we are fairly conservative with money for the most part, but she likes to do things. She likes to spend money, and she's very gracious with giving gifts out and whatnot. And I can't say that's a bad thing because she's very giving of her time and giving gifts and all that stuff. But I also hate spending money. I cannot stand it. So that's one of the good things about this trip being in the rearview mirror is that I no longer have to spend any money. Thank God. I told my wife when we got back, I said, babe, we spent $1,000 on this trip. Thousands of dollars. We're done. For next month, we get back in order. We're going to be saving money again. All the money we built up and spent on this trip, we got to build it up again. Okay, so we got to start refocusing on priorities now. And the good thing too, also, it's we're not going to plan anything really big, really for the next couple months because school. We can't really do much with school. The kids back to school, so that's going to be the next thing for us to do is continue to save money and working our ass off and whatnot. Another thing too, also about this trip, that's going to say it's a negative, but the only thing also is that the first full week college football started this week while I was in New York. So I had a hard time really. I couldn't really watch most of the games on Thursdays and Friday, and I missed most of the Ohio State-Texas game. I just see the highlights after. Look, guys, way too early to call Archie Manning a bust. Way too early. You're asking for a lot for this kid to his first actual start, like as a starting quarterback. I don't count last year when he came in spot duty, for Quentin Ewers. I don't count that stuff. You're asking a lot for a kid with all the pressure being a Manning, number one. Number two being Texas, number one in the country, okay? And then you're going on the road to play the defending national champions, okay? Asking a lot, to start his career, okay? You're asking a lot. Look, was it a bad performance? Absolutely. I'm not giving him a pass on that. But let's give this kid 4 weeks. Let's run a 4-week sample size before we start knocking this kid saying he's a bust, okay? Because you're setting a high bar, okay? Ohio State, the fact that in that game, I guess it's correct for defense for one thing else, but they were in the game. They had a chance to win the game still. They lost one possession. So, but too early to call him a bust. Way too early to call him a bust. So, okay. So this game I did catch now. I'm now, you guys know I'm a big diehard Florida State Seminoles fan. I did get to watch this game on the plane, actually. We took off at 4 o'clock and the game started at 3:30, so it was perfect. I watched most of the entire game on the plane. FSU upsets Alabama, but again, I'm very happy we won this game. No question about that. The kid Castellanos, the quarterback, Tommy Castellanos, fun to watch. He runs a little too much for my taste, but again, we're now in an era of mobility, and with quarterbacks, you have to be mobile. But I'm not going to buy in just fully yet. Look, I think FSU's low bar, of course. FSU was definitely better than they were last year, 2-10. We all agree to that. The question is FSU that much better? What we saw at FSU, is this a quality win for the Florida State Seminoles? Okay? Because of Alabama, who they are. Or is Alabama that much worse now? We need to give this thing a few weeks to cook. Okay? Give it a few weeks before we start figuring out, whether or not FSU is better, Bama's worse. And because here's the thing with me. Because of this game and the result, especially too, I want Alabama to be good this year because it helps Florida State's strength of schedule, obviously, if the Seminoles do play well the rest of the year and have a chance to get to the playoff. So let's hope that Bama losing was Bama being a good team and is lost to a much improved Florida State team. Let this thing cook a couple weeks. But I will say, Bama fans, they've gotten spoiled for the last 20 years. This is year 2 of Caleb DeBoer. Nick Saban's gone. Can't save this team. That seat's getting warm, guys. That the worst seat's getting a little warm. I know it feels a bit premature. People saying you need to get fired now. Folks, that shit ain't happening, bro. Okay? Bro, that is not happening on any level. Did you see how much it'll cost for the Crimson Tide to fire him, to buy him out? $70 million plus to do so. That shit ain't happening, buddy. So unless you have $70 million to contribute to the school to get this guy out of town, that ain't happening. All right. Sunday, I did catch the Notre Dame UM game. It was a fun game. Both teams, I think, should be really good and hang around to the end. Notre Dame, I think, will still go to the playoff. They almost came back and won that game. In fact, they were down, big in the first half and into the third quarter, and then they made a run late, tied the game even in the fourth quarter before UM came down to win the game with a field goal. Miami, like I said, I didn't pick them to go to the playoff, but the ACC is very weak, so it's very possible that they can find themselves playing for a chance to go to the playoff. But because the ACC is so weak, although let's see if Florida State's better. We'll see. Clemson lost. Love that too, as well. We'll see if ACC's improved this year to where it helps the strength schedule. But big win for UM there against Notre Dame, a top 5 team. Obviously, I think number 6 that's come to the game actually rather. So big game for them there. Big win for them there. And I saw last night Bill Belichick got trounced. It's funny. Last night watching the game, they go down the field, they score first. UNC scores first. Oh shoot! I saw the Colin Cowherd tweet. I think it was trolling, obviously. And then after being on 7-0, TCU puts up 24. What was it? 41 points in a row. 41 points in a row. Unanswered points. Yeah, looks like it'll be a long year for Hoodie. I don't know. Again, let's not get too crazy yet on these results. Maybe UNC is that bad. Maybe they are that bad. But it's only week 1, guys. It's only week 1. Although in college football, it's a lot more concerning if you again blown up that bad in week 1. You know what I mean? So, all right. Also, while I was out of town, the day I was out of town actually, we got the news that Micah Parsons traded to the Green Bay Packers. The Packers received Parsons in exchange for 2 first-round picks for next year and the year after. That's 2026, 2027, and defensive tackle Kenny Clark. The trade comes after a lengthy contract dispute between Parsons and the Cowboys. Upon his arrival in Green Bay, Micah did sign a 4-year, $188 million deal with, guys, listen to this one, $136 million guaranteed, making him officially the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. That is sick. Now, my thoughts on the trade. Obviously, Mike Parsons is one of the best players on that side of the ball in the league. I gave the Packers an A for this thing, for this trade, because it's a need for right now. And it does position them to potentially be a Super Bowl contender in the NFC. Where at this point, if you're looking down the entire conference right now, after Philadelphia, number 2 is kind of open. Like most folks will probably still say Detroit because they were there 15-2 last year, but they lost both their coordinators. That's gotta cost you something, okay? San Francisco should be back in the conversation. They had an easy schedule this year. We previewed that on the season preview a couple weeks ago on the podcast with Zach and Chris. The Rams, we'll see if Stafford stays healthy. Washington's improved, obviously, and they made a run last year. But no one outside Philadelphia feels like a team that's definitive, outside Philadelphia. And Green Bay is a team that is a playoff team. They were a 10-11-1 team. You got a guy like Micah Parsons. Now, look, he improves the team. Now, are they going to win the Super Bowl because of him? Who knows? But everything falls on Jordan Love. Everything falls on Jordan Love. As for Dallas, the Cowboys did get aesthetically anyway, the Cowboys did get a nice return on this, but there's no telling for a few years whether or not this is going to be a good move or not. Like, people saying this could be the Herschel Walker trade and all that. But here's the thing, here's the only reason why I push back on that. Green Bay, because of where they are as a team, they're a playoff team, borderline Super Bowl contender, they're going to be high draft picks. So they're not going to be. They might be impact players, or they may not be. They may not be the impact players that you think they're going to be. That you would draft with a team that's in the top 10. Put it that way, Again, Micah's a great player, but some people, including myself, might argue he's a bit tad overrated, and that he did show some signs of being a distraction. With the podcast, of course, and the comments he's made, internally, whatnot. But he deserved his money. He deserved his money, and Jerry Jones played with fire. Now, having said that, I think Jerry Jones made a calculation here. I paid Dak a lot of money. I paid CeeDee Lamb a lot of money. And Mike was on the verge of getting money. And yet my team, yes, they go 12-5 every year, but lose in the first round of playoffs. So at this point, is it even worth the squeeze? I don't know. We won't know on Dallas then for another couple of years. Because here's the deal. If the Cowboys get quality draft picks next 2 years off this trade, and they somehow crack the code and go to the NFC Championship game at some point, go to the Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl, God forbid, of course, on my end, then Jerry Jones is looking as a hero. But we don't know. In the moment, it looks bad. In the moment. But I can also see what exactly Jerry Jones was doing in that moment. All right. Speaking of football, I told you guys a couple weeks ago, I am back to playing fantasy football. Okay, after 6 years off, I am back to playing football. I did my draft last week. Now, some of you guys may have heard a little bit of that about my draft. I was actually on, we launched the NBA show on this feed last week with myself and Greg Reenergized. He was actually helping me for a couple of picks while I was recording the podcast. Here is my official roster for my fantasy football team with my friends at work, my coworkers. So my quarterback this year, here's my starting lineup. Right now, my quarterback is Kyler Murray. My running backs is Josh Jacobs and Trayvon Henderson and R.J. Harvey, who is a sleeper pick this year. My receivers right now are Malik Neighbors and Calvin Ridley. My tight end is George Kittle. My kicker is Kai Fairbairn. And then my defense is, I went homer, the Giants defense, who should be, on paper, really, really, really good. As for my reserves, I have Caleb Williams as my quarterback behind. I got Jerome Ford and Travis Etienne Jr. as my running backs on the bench. My receivers, my roster receivers are Matthew Golden, Keon Coleman, who I love, Darnell Mooney, and Christian Kirk from Houston Texans. So, a little stuffy here, but this should be a solid roster. I know ESPN graded these rosters, gave me a C. Whatever. We'll see how that plays out going forward. But I'm excited a little bit. I just hope I'm engaged by week 5, because one of my problems with fantasy football is that I always play this stuff. When I did play it, if my team was competitive by week 5, week 6, even when we're not competitive or we're competitive, I would lose interest. I prefer to do weekly fantasy or sports betting as opposed to fantasy football that requires a commitment every single week. But I'm doing it for my coworkers. We do a podcast here at my day job every week, and it's all of us. It's for camaraderie and all that stuff. So I'm not gonna be a sucker on that situation. Anyway, let's talk feuds. So we got 2 artists. Well, it's really one artist feuding with another one, because no one has said a word. But Aaron Lewis and Bruce Springsteen are in a feud, although the feud is really more so on one end. Aaron Lewis, of course, you guys know, is the frontman of the band Staind and a solo country artist. He is an outspoken conservative and a vocal supporter for Donald Trump. He has publicly criticized Bruce Springsteen on multiple occasions, including his 2021 song, I Am the Only One, or Am I the Only One, which contains the lyric, quote, am I the only one who quits singing along every time they play a Springsteen song, unquote. In a recent appearance on the Tucker Carlson show, Lewis reignited the conflict, accusing Springsteen of being, quote, a disgusting display of not appreciating what was handed to him, unquote, as an American. Lewis claimed that Springsteen duped the American public with his 1984 hit, Born in USA, representing him as a patriotic anthem when Lewis believes it was one of the most anti-American songs ever. He expressed anger himself for not recognizing the song's true meaning for so long. Now, Springsteen, a longtime supporter of Democratic candidates, has a history of using his platform to address social and political issues. While Born in USA was widely misunderstood as a jingoistic song, its lyrics actually paint a big picture of a Vietnam veteran's struggle to find work and purpose upon returning home. Springsteen's work often focuses on the lives of working-class Americans, and he has been a consistent critic of what he sees a decline in American values and a rise in authoritarianism. In response to Lewis's comments, many online have pointed out that Lewis's criticism is based on a fundamental misinterpretation of a song that has been widely discussed and analyzed for decades. The feud highlights a broader cultural divide where the same symbols and expressions of American identity can be interpreted in widely different ways. Now, here's my take on this. Everyone has got your opinion. You know, one's perspective is determined by their upbringing and background. So I can't sit there and say that, for the record, I actually lean Springsteen's way on this, for the record. Okay? I think Aaron Lewis is a little out of his gourd on this situation. Okay? But he has right his opinion, you know. I disagree with him. He has right his opinion, you know. I think Springsteen, for example, has not responded, probably because he doesn't even know who the hell Aaron Lewis is or Stain is. One is an icon. Springsteen is an American worldwide icon. Okay, the other had a moment in the sun where that band, who by the way, I'm a bigger fan of Stain than Aaron Lewis than I am Springsteen. But let's be clear about who's bigger, who's more impactful. That's not even a conversation. That is Springsteen. Stain was big for a good 3, 4, 5, maybe even 5 years between 1999 and 2003. So he probably feels like me responding to Aaron Lewis is probably beneath him at this point, which I can see his argument if that is so. Now, look, I don't subscribe to the idea that because of a specific political leaning makes me less of an American. We should be able to criticize who the hell we want. There is nothing more American than the freedom of speech and be able to criticize what we want. Now, you have a right to be wrong, and in the case of Aaron Lewis, he has a right to be wrong, which I think he is wrong, because he's probably mad at Springsteen because he's a Democrat. So you're saying all Democrats, because they're Democrats, they don't have good intentions? Like I always told you guys, when it comes to all this political shit, I have no problem with Democrats as voters. And to be fair, I have a problem with Republicans as voters. I have a problem with the apparatus, the folks who run those parties. We need to separate the two. You know, you can hate Donald Trump, you can hate Joe Biden, but you can't hate all the supporters. I'm sorry, you just can't. And if you're not, and if you do, you're a fool. You're just a fool. So, you know, this is a one-sided feud, really, because Springsteen hasn't really responded to him at all, and he probably won't. You know, but I think Aaron Lewis is a little more angry guy. You know, I understand. I respect the fact that he has a right to his opinion and it's his political beliefs, and you know, it's fine. But you know, knowing what this song is very, you know, what it means. If you're gonna criticize Springsteen, at least get the shit right. Know what you're criticizing first, because you were totally wrong what it meant. So anyway, that's one feud. You got another feud in the world of wrestling. You know, Becky Lynch, of course, the current WWE Intercontinental Champion on the women's side, pissed off Kelly Osbourne, the daughter of the late Ozzy Osbourne. It happened last week. You know, Becky Lynch angered Kelly Osbourne, making a controversial comment about her late father, Ozzy, during Monday Night Raw in Birmingham, England. In a villainous heel persona, Becky Lynch was cutting a promo and took a jab in the city of Birmingham, which is Ozzy Osbourne's hometown. She said, quote, "The only good thing that came out of here died a month ago," a direct reference to Ozzy's death in July 2025. She added that Ozzy had a good sense to move to LA, a proper city, because if I lived in Birmingham, I'd die too. Kelly Osbourne, who was still grieving her father's passing, took Instagram to express her outrage. She called Becky Lynch a, quote, "disrespectful dirtbag," and slammed the WWE for allowing such comments to be made about her father and her hometown. Sorry, I'm coughing and stuffing right now. I don't know what happened here. Now, when I first saw this thing, I thought, this has got to be a work. Like, because, correct me if I'm wrong here. What Becky said was not insulting towards her father. She never insulted her father. She literally said that Ozzy was the best thing to happen in Birmingham. She was insulting the people of Birmingham, which, yes, it is intertwined. But she wasn't insulting her father. Okay? But, having said that, this is low-hanging fruit for WWE writers to bring this up. Given that Ozzy only died a month ago. So, I know it's still very much, you know, there, and it's very much tangible that this story about Ozzy, and we're still feeling the sense of loss of not having Ozzy Osbourne. Low-hanging fruit, though. But in any case, I don't think the joke insults was Ozzy. But I also understand, you know, Kelly's perspective in a sense that even if she might have misunderstood what Becky was saying, Kelly is still grieving her father's death. It's very fresh. So I'll give her some grace there. So, anyway, before we get out of here, I wanted to give out my, I told you on the podcast, I just got back from New York. I also want to start prioritizing traveling more as my kids get older. My wife and I are starting to get more freedom to do things. So I want to start simple. Because obviously this place I want to go to outside the country, which I haven't done yet. But there's a lot of places here that in this country, and I've been around the country, quite a bit. But there's still places I have not visited yet. So I decided to create a top 5 places that I have not visited yet that I want to visit in the near future. Okay? This is not an order. This is just 5 places. Okay? Number 5, Las Vegas. Now, I am planning on going there next year, assuming this concert with Metallica at the Sphere becomes official. My wife has no interest in going to Vegas whatsoever. So if I do go to Vegas, it'll be with myself or friends or whatever. But she has no interest in going to Vegas. So this trip, any trip I go to Vegas, I do in Vegas, will not involve her at all. All right. Number 4, Seattle, Washington. I've always been fascinated with Seattle, Washington. That northwest corner of the country that people forget about sometimes. Like, yes, they have the Seahawks and, whatnot, have college football there. I've always had a fascination with Seattle. I know it rains a lot in the spring. I like to go in that time when it rains, go to the fish market and kind of just be there in that vibe and see how it is. I've always had a fascination with Seattle. So Seattle's in my top 5. Number 3, Texas, Austin, Texas. Well, Texas as a whole, to be honest with you. And I want to go to Dallas, obviously. I want to go to Houston, of course, even San Antonio, but I especially want to go to Austin, Texas. Especially Austin, Texas, I want to go to. It's a very progressive place. Lots of things to do there. It's a flourishing city, I've been told. Very diverse also, too. I like diversity. You know what I mean? So, Austin, Texas is definitely on my list. All right? Number 2, Minnesota. Minnesota's shocking to people, yes. But I've always felt some weird, kinship to Minnesota. Minneapolis, rather. Minnesota. Minneapolis, more specific here, of course. Just, go to a Vikings game there once down the road. Go to a Wolves game down the road, maybe a Twins game. I always had a little thing for Minneapolis, Minnesota. So, and number 1, of course, San Francisco. Of course, I've been to California many times over. Never been to San Francisco. I would never live there. It's too fucking expensive. But at the same time, San Francisco is, my bucket list actually, one of my big sports bucket lists actually is to go to a Giants game out there. I think it's AT&T Stadium, I think it is. Or AT&T Park, rather. Gorgeous stadium where it's located off the water. Is probably my biggest, I think after Fenway, and maybe just as big as Fenway, the biggest bucket list for me to go to a stadium in Major League Baseball. So San Francisco is definitely on my top of the list of places I want to visit. So again, Minneapolis, Las Vegas, Seattle, Texas as a whole, and then San Francisco as well. So that's it for me. Again, on the podcast, dated, what is it now? September 2nd, 2025. On X at EJ Christian number 7. Earnestly podcast across all podcast catchers. You can find it, of course, on YouTube at Earnestly Pod, on TikTok at Earnestly Pod, Instagram Earnestly Pod. I'm wheezing now, and I don't know why. I don't know why I'm getting sick. It's part of this allergies again, but gotta get out of here. Talk to you guys soon. Love y'all. Take care. Until next one, we'll talk later.